Today's a really special day from so many different perspectives. We're beginning our study of the path of all of the Buddha's wisdom collected in two texts that we call stages of the path, or Lam Rim texts, one by Atisha and one by Gampopa. But we're studying these two texts in the context of where we are in our lives individually. We may be very experienced practitioners, or we may be fairly new. We may be younger and older. And it's also in the context of this really beautiful Sangha that we have formed, woven of threads of karmic connection. And in the great river of the Dharma that flowed from India to Tibet, in the particular Kagyu and Drikung Kagyu stream. So we have this moment of nowness in ourselves, in our Sangha, and in history. And this moment in our Sangha is a moment of heightened understanding of impermanence, because we have lost our dear friend Charlie. And Charlie began in this Sangha during COVID and attended every single offering of Vajradakini, which would be 4 days a week. So he was a really constant presence. He almost never missed a gathering. And so we have the heightened sense of impermanence, as well as his example of dedication to learning and dedication to practice. He had a really remarkable commitment to practice. He died in the early hours of Friday, but he came to our gathering on Tuesday. So really, 3 days before he died, he was actively participating in the Sangha. And then I talked to him Thursday afternoon. So 12 hours before he died, his mind was on bodhicitta. So this is considered really a life well lived, and keeping one's mind focused on really the important thing, opening to Buddha nature, opening to our own bodhicitta, and entering the passage to the bardo in the next life as fully alert as possible. So he really used his precious human life to practice and to learn. So today we're going to weave a beginning and an ending. That's what impermanence is, each moment beginning and ending, each nowness beginning and ending. And I've invited people to stay on as we, towards the end, go into a remembrance of Charlie and celebrating him a little bit, our connection, celebrating our connection. But let's break open this coming together of the stages of the path and embarking on the stages of the path with the wisdom of this historic meeting. And the historic meeting of the two texts is Atisha meeting Marpa. I'm so glad that for the last couple of months we've been talking about lineage, and we talked about Marpa going to India to bring to Tibet in that particular time all of the great teachings. And when he was traveling through Nepal, he met Atisha. And Atisha was the first teacher to put together a Lam Rim text, a text that gathers the sutra teachings as well as all the teachings of the commentaries in an organized fashion so that the stages of the path can be understood. Marpa went on, and his students, his primary student Milarepa, then taught Gampopa, and Gampopa composed the text, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation. Atisha, having created the first text, several hundred years later produced Longchenpa, then 800 years later produced Patra Rinpoche, who studied the works of Longchenpa and composed Words of My Perfect Teacher. So we see these karmic meetings, and the karmic meetings producing key figures who then wrote these extraordinary texts that we study that we're intimately connected to through our teachers. And just like they formed sanghas in the past and studied together, we have a sangha in this moment and are studying together. And when I looked at the two texts this morning, and as this week I was contemplating them and contemplating our loss of Charlie, they seem to resonate, our process and the process of these key figures. The reverence in which they begin, acknowledging that this is not an individual path. We are individuals on the path, but we're traveling in this great river and karmically connected to these great teachers and to each other. And so each of the texts starts with an homage, and the homage reflects our yearning. Our yearning is the same as the yearning of the great people who composed the text. And I think Charlie was, in his life, an example of the spiritual search and that yearning. And devotion to the path that is a product of that yearning. But that yearning unites us with these authors and their teachers. So I want to read a little bit for you to experience the beauty of the beginning of these texts. Words of My Perfect Teacher starts with venerable teachers whose compassion is infinite and unconditional. I prostrate myself before you all. In your wisdom, you saw the true nature of whatever can be known. So acknowledging in that beautiful first two sentences, venerable teachers whose compassion is infinite, you saw the true nature of whatever can be known. And as we embark on the Buddhist path, or whatever we might name our path, it's that true nature of whatever can be known that is indivisible from infinite compassion. The light of your love beamed upon benefiting all beings. You elucidated the profound path, the summit of all vehicles. Patrul Rinpoche acknowledges Longchenpa, the root teacher he related to, who predates him by 500 years in the tradition of Atisha. The jewel ornament begins this way. I prostrate to the noble Manjushri in youthful form. Manjushri is the name of the wisdom aspect of the Buddha. I prostrate to noble Manjushri in youthful form, the victorious ones, their followers, the holy Dharma, and to the lamas who are their foundation. This noble teaching, which is like a wish-fulfilling jewel, will be written for the benefit of myself and others, depending on the kindness of Milarepa and Lord Atisha. So Gampopa, student of Milarepa and Marpa, goes right back to Atisha, who maybe 100 years earlier than Gampopa wrote this first stages of the path kind of text. So we see the threads of time uniting in the lives of our teacher just as they unite in our lives. We're coming through Lord Jigten Sumgun, who 800 years ago formed the Drikung Kagyu. Patrul Rinpoche lived in the 1800s, a much more recent figure, but he's relating back to Atisha as well. And our cohort is relating to the key figures in our lineage. Next week we'll be celebrating His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche's birthday, who is our connection to the Kagyu lineage. And we're relating to each other in this moment where we have a shared loss of Charlie. And we share the same yearning and dedication to learning the stages of the path. My last conversation with Charlie was about all the things he had studied in his life were united by the treasuring of kindness of bodhicitta. And we are united by our desire to learn how to follow in their footsteps so that we embody that infinite, unconditional compassion. Words of my perfect teacher then goes on to describe why Patrul Rinpoche composed this text. So all the texts begin first with an homage and then with why. Why now? Why am I composing this text? And Patrul Rinpoche writes, the writings of omniscient Longchenpa and his lineage contain the Buddha's entire teachings, the quintessential instructions that bring about Buddhahood in a single lifetime. The ordinary outer and the inner preliminaries of the path, and the additional advice on the swift path of transference. So, Words of My Perfect Teacher is actually a commentary that structures the stage of stages of the path combined with Nundro, or how to practice the path. The jewel ornament structures the stages of the path in great details. So when Gampopa expresses why he's composing this path now, he begins with, in general, all phenomena are included in the two categories of samsara and nirvana. So he begins with, all right, this is about relative and absolute. And we can say practice is all about experiencing relative and absolute. If you remember when we were looking at Lord Jigten Sumgun's key text, Gonchig, the first verse was about relative and absolute. And years ago, when we were studying the Bodhisattva's way of life, the great text on the Bodhisattva mind of bodhicitta, the first verse was on relative and absolute. So this yearning we feel this path that we're embarking on is a clarification of how we move through our confusion to wisdom. What are the stages of moving from relative to absolute? And the jewel ornament continues with this very brilliant description of the evolution. That which is called samsara is empty by nature, a confused projection. Its defining characteristic is that it manifests as suffering. That which is called nirvana is also empty by nature, but all the confused projections are exhausted and dissipated. Its defining characteristic is freedom from all suffering. Who is it that is confused in samsara? All sentient beings of the three realms are confused. On what basis does confusion arise? Confusion arises on the basis of emptiness. What causes confusion to arise? The cause of confusion is a great ignorance. So it continues like this with a sense of the evolution of the path, which is this movement from confusion to wisdom, which we are working with every moment. And what we understood as we sat vigil with Charlie is that the moment of death is just when we finally see this precious human life is impermanent, and in this moment we can move from confusion to wisdom. We don't want to wait till the moment of our death to really see that that's the purpose of life. But in the moment of each of our deaths, we're modeling the importance. This is it, this moment of nowness. This is what we have, this precious human life in which we can move from confusion to wisdom. And let's pay attention. So in sitting vigil, we were paying attention as Charlie was paying attention with every ounce of his being. Then jewel ornament continues a little later. if you think perhaps this confusion will disappear by itself, then understand that samsara is known to be endless. Understand that samsara is confusion. Understand how much suffering there is. Understand how long it endures. From today onward, you should make an effort as much as possible to achieve unsurpassable enlightenment. 3 days before his death, he was making every effort and reminding us that all we have is now. Jewel ornament continues. What manner of things are needed in order to make the effort? Okay, here we get down to business. What is needed to make the effort to go from confusion to wisdom? The preliminary cause is the essence of the well-gone one as a working basis. So this is really the beauty of the jewel ornament of liberation. The first sentence is, the working basis is our Buddha nature. We each have the capacity because we each have Buddha nature. The seed is the relative, the fruition is the ultimate. We are at once the seed of Buddha nature and the ultimate, the pervasive Buddha nature, but we only understand it when confusion dissipates. So, how do we make that effort? We see that we have the potential. What's needed to make the effort? The contributory cause is the spiritual master. This is exactly why the homage in each of these texts goes right to the gratitude to our ancestors in the lineage, in the river of Buddhism. Whether it's Atisha Longchenpa, Gampopa, Lord Jigten Sungun, His Holiness Chatseng Rinpoche, His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche. This is how we're connecting to the great teachings, and our heart opens and we listen attentively to the teachings of those beings who we see and acknowledge have achieved what is to be known and possessing infinite compassion. That is so rare. The Shantideva talks about it as a flash of lightning in the dark of night, an instant of nowness, these great teachers arise. So with that openness of gratitude, the method is the spiritual master's instruction. The result is the body of perfect Buddhahood. The activities are benefiting sentient beings without conceptual thoughts. Benefiting sentient beings without conceptual thoughts. This is what the Heart Sutra is pointing out. Benefiting beings without conceptual thoughts. These 6 topics form the body. Of the jewel ornament of liberation. The words of my perfect teacher gives additional instruction, the stages of the path, and entering Vajrayana practice. And if we were to look at the contents of the jewel ornament of Words of My Perfect Teacher, what I got a kick out of was the way the Words of My Perfect Teacher begins are, well, yes, there's this text to explore, but what's the attitude we should have? This quality of openness and attention and let's say riveting our attention because we understand we only have this precious human life. And it goes right from precious human life to impermanence. And where are we this morning? Precious life and impermanence in front of our faces, because a week ago, last Sunday, we had the precious human life in the form of Charlie, and this Sunday we have the impermanence of now Charlie is not with us. So with that kind of beauty of the resonance of his joyful exploration, we continue as a Sangha with joyful exploration for the next year plus, looking at this text. So I think I'd like to begin by, let's say, just taking this all in, the weaving of us as human beings with our yearning and our gratitude, connecting to the human beings who wrote these texts with yearning and gratitude, having met the Dharma, just opening their hearts with love and appreciation of their teachers, and passing their knowledge to us as a Sangha, and us as a Sangha in this moment, seeing precious human life, impermanence, and love for Charlie. So let's take a minute to just sit with this moment of nowness. So, Diane, if you could key up the Amitabha prayer from the Tuesday, Thursday prayer book, and let's just acknowledge, we know, Kathy, that you lost your dad, and then Kathy Mills wrote to me that she lost a mentor. Several people in the Sangha have lost dear ones. So if you would write in the chat books, let's write in the chat all the recent losses. And we know, John, you're in the process of watching your mom change. Miriam's in the process of watching her father change. So there's a continuum of people approaching death, babies being born, but in particular, all the loved ones, let's say in the last month or so in this Sangha, if you could write their names in the chat box. The recent names that I have are Sharon Lindavi, Mary Andrews, Jenny Keegan, Roxanne, and Kenneth George Haley. So we think of all of these beings in our Tibetan Buddhism, transitioning in the bardo, heading towards their next life. And during the bardo, there are many opportunities to see one's perfect Buddha nature, to experience one's perfect Buddha nature, to remember that we always have been the absolute, that the absolute is our nature. And we express this in the form of the Amitabha prayer. And our dear ones, either through the habit of thinking of us with love, or we can think of Charlie always coming to this time of practice with love. They're with us, and so we recite the Amitabha prayer, which is a condensed way of giving instructions in the bardo. Remembering that everything we experience is the confused projection of our mind. So nothing to worry about, nothing to be distracted by, rather focus on the absolute, which is expressed in this prayer as the countenance of Amitabha. So, Diane, if you'd like to read the Amitabha prayer 3 times.
Emaho, in space, is wondrous Buddha Amitabha, with Chenrezig to his right and Vajrapani to his left. They are surrounded by a retinue of innumerable Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immediately on transmigrating from here, uninterrupted by other kinds of birth, may I and others take birth in that great pure realm of infinite wondrous bliss and happiness known as Dewachen. Thus may we behold the countenance of Amitabha, limitless illumination. I beseech all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions to bless that this aspiration prayer that I have made be accomplished without hindrance. Teyata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. Emaho, in space, is wondrous Buddha Amitabha, with Chenrezig to his right and Vajrapani to his left. They are surrounded by a retinue of innumerable Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immediately on transmigrating from here, uninterrupted by other kinds of birth, may I and others take birth in that great pure realm of infinite wondrous bliss and happiness known as Dewa-chan. Thus may we behold the countenance of Amitabha, limitless illumination. I beseech all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions to bless that this aspiration prayer that I have made be accomplished without hindrance. Teyata pensadriya awa bodhanaya soha. Emaho! In space is wondrous Buddha Amitabha, with Chenrezig to his right and Vajrapani to his left. They are surrounded by a retinue of innumerable Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immediately on transmigrating from here, uninterrupted by other kinds of birth, may I and others take birth in that great pure realm of infinite wondrous bliss and happiness known as Dewa-chan. Thus may we behold the countenance of Amitabha, limitless illumination. I beseech all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions to bless that this aspiration prayer that I have made be accomplished without hindrance. Teyata pensadriya awa bodhanaya soha.
So this prayer is really quite an extraordinary teaching for our lives and the process, the dying process. In a sense, we're acknowledging that our yearning for perfect wisdom is unfinished. And even being unfinished, may we, in the moment of nowness, whether it's this moment or the moment of our death, realize that perfect wisdom and should we not quite understand that, may we in the next moment be in a precious human life where we have the opportunity to study the Dharma with great teachers. Dewa Chen is a envisioning of a precious human life in which the Dharma is ever present. It's the sound where the teachers we need are ever present. And in essence, in this modern time,
You're muted.
Yeah.
I muted the wrong person. There was sort of an echo. Dewa Chen is this moment of nowness for us when we have the teachings and we have these great teachers alive. You know, how much more Dewa Chen do we want? It's really, can we pay attention that Dewa Chen is here? Let's use every moment. And if we're using every moment, we are in Dewa Chen. So let's contemplate that for a moment. That's why we emphasize mindfulness so much. Do we recognize Dewa Chen or not? Then we have in the chat room, the chat box, folks posted names of loved ones who we recognize are moving closer to death. And we know in impermanence, we're also on that same train. We just don't recognize how unpredictable the moment of death is. Charlie's partner shared that she and Charlie both had thought when he stopped his oxygen, it would be a pretty immediate death. But it was hours before he died. So They had planned that they would stop the oxygen on Saturday, but his body told him it was Friday. Even when you're close to death, you can't predict the moment of death. So all we have is this moment of nowness, and using this nowness to the best of our abilities. And watching those who are teaching us how clearly unpredictable death is and uncontrollable. So if we're not in perfect wisdom yet, if we're not in direct indivisibility of emptiness, compassion, where are we? And when we look at where are we go right to the four immeasurables. Diane, can you move to the four immeasurables? So when we're thinking about our loved ones and sitting vigil with our loved ones and sitting vigil with ourselves moment to moment, that thread is the four immeasurables. As our understanding of the four immeasurables opens, blossoms, expands, that is our experience of the stages of the path uniting in increasing wisdom, increasing action to benefit beings, and increasing mind of loving kindness, compassion, joy, rejoicing, and equanimity. And with our loved ones who are in their own spiritual journey, the common thread is the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, joyfulness, and equanimity. So our loved ones can certainly understand our presence and the intention of our presence to be an embodiment of the four immeasurables. So sometimes the teachings of Buddhism can seem complicated or esoteric, but really they're skillful methods of expanding our understanding of loving kindness, compassion, joyful, rejoicing, joyful effort, and equanimity, and embodying them. So not just the theory, but the nowness of how we're able to express this. So really, it's just a few days since Charlie died, and it's the first time that someone who is actively meeting with us, Ginny Keegan died after a year or so of not being with us, but Charlie is someone who was just here last week. So I want to move into an open time for us to express how we experienced his bodhicitta, his sense of humor, his perfection and imperfection, how you might express appreciation in what you learned being in Sangha together with Charlie. So if you want to unshare, we'll move to a gallery. And I'm going to close the YouTube now, but I invite people who watch later in YouTube to consider gratitude, appreciation, and really, aren't we talking about the three jewels? Our teacher, the teachings, and the Sangha that we experience together. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise, where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.